Observation and assessment. When using the Grammar of Games model, the focus is on the four concepts that underpin a movement experience. That is, decision-making, strategy and tactics, communication and concentration, and movement skill execution. An educator can then explore these concepts through context. So that is different movement experiences or sports. During observation, educators will focus on one aspect within a concept. The aspects of concepts are at the bottom of the page on Module 1. So why do we want to observe players? Educators want to observe players so that they can provide meaningful learning experiences that will either assist in the transfer of learning or progress a person within a specific concept. To do this, we need to observe and collect data in regard to a player's level of ability. To begin observation, an educator must first decide what they want to be observing. From here, an educator can develop player-specific observable characteristics to code. Essentially, this is what the educator will be looking at or looking for during play. These characteristics will be aligned with the different levels of a player on a scale or continuum. On my next slide, you can see that I use a 4-point scale. Here is an example of observable characteristics that I have created. The observation focus for this example was on multiple movements. I have given each level of code, 1 through to 4, which can be used when observing play. So, when observing play and looking for characteristics, educators can use the above codes to place into an observation coding sheet. This will help form evidence of a player's level of ability. Here is an example of a coding sheet that I've created for multiple movements. During play, an educator would only write a number to code as opposed to writing out specifically what they see, thus making the process a lot easier and time efficient. Side by side, you can see how looking for observable characteristics to code players can help us gather evidence on a player's level of ability. Further examples of using observable characteristics in coding sheets is explored in Modules 4, 5 and 6. If other colleagues are also implementing Grammar of Games, educators can compare characteristics with each other to reach first level of agreement. That is what you determined to be a beginner, developing, developed or highly developed player the same? Reaching level of agreements and adjusting if needed helps to gain consistent level of assessment. This process takes practice. So it's important that educators practice observing players and coding against characteristics in most, if not all, lessons. Additional adjustments may need to be made to your observation and assessment practices, and that is okay. The importance of observing, analysing and assessing is to use the collected data to make meaning which can inform future practices. So, an educator needs to ask themselves, what does this data tell me? It is the meaning derived from the data, the interpretation, and the learning experiences that emerge from that interpretation that is important for learning and transfer of learning. Don't forget, you can code anything and everything, but it is what you do with it that is important. Also, as mentioned in Module 1, the concepts in the Grammar of Games interact with each other, meaning they both impact on and influence one's ability to engage in movement experiences. Therefore, if an educator is observing something, they also need to consider potential concepts that could be impacting on or influencing the player's ability to be involved. Potential implications. Whilst reaching level of agreements and adjusting helps to gain consistent level of assessment of players, this may be difficult if colleagues or students have no understanding regarding the Grammar of Games. As the grammar of games is a relatively new concept, it's important to introduce the model so slowly and strategically into schools. For example, begin with Year 7s so that they progress through their high school life learning about the grammar of games. If you try to implement it in senior years, there may be some retaliation. Likewise, it's very possible that colleagues will also be reluctant. Start simple and provide colleagues with observable characteristics tables that you have created yourself. This can help them become familiar with the process. Once they have an understanding on how to observe, analyse and assess players based on the grammar of games, then from here you can begin to adjust characteristics and include ideas and suggestions of colleagues.